So hello and welcome to the Wildfire listening session. My name is Carrie Berger and I'm the manager of Oregon State University's Extension Fire Program. The Fire Program is a new program in Extension and we are gearing up as we speak to help facilitate landscape scale cross-boundary management projects on the ground and also to provide education and outreach to all Oregonians. So much like our Forestry and Natural Resource Extension colleagues, the Fire Program team will be living and working in communities throughout Oregon. So Extension, along with its partners, created this session for you to be able to share stories from this past week, as well as to ask questions. This session is not intended to solve the fire problem, but to understand what the perceived problems are and then figure out how we can best help going forward. I want to begin by recognizing all that's going on, including the global plant pandemic, social unrest, our economic situation, and now fire. Let us acknowledge that it is an extremely stressful time with challenges that are affecting some of us in deeper ways than others. Know that you are not alone. In today's session, we will come together and talk about fire. We had nearly 500 people register for this listening session, most of whom are from Oregon. This session today will focus on Oregon, but will have some applicability to where you live as well. I want you all to know that this session is being recorded. Your audio has been muted, and I ask that you keep yourself muted unless you are talking. If you are new to Zoom, you can find audio and video buttons in the menu bar to the lower left of your screen. If you are having audio troubles and are connected to your computer's audio, I suggest hanging up and dialing in with your phone. With so many people on the call, it might be handy to directly see who is talking. You can switch your view and select Presenter View in the upper right corner of your screen. We will also be using the poll function during this session, and at times you'll see a poll box pop up on your screen. If you don't see a poll box pop up, you can find the poll option in the menu bar at the bottom of your screen. Finally, you can also find the chat option in that same menu bar at the bottom of your screen, and I'll have more details on the chat box coming up. Again, because there are so many of us on the call, I'd like to talk about some ground rules. Number one, we are all in this together, so please extend grace and respect during this session. We will begin by having a storytelling session. This session will last 30 minutes. If you'd like to share your story verbally, please add your name to the chat box. We will call on you in the order your name appears. Do not put your name in the chat box at this time if you have a question. If you don't want to tell your story verbally, please do type it in the chat box for others to read. Your experience is important. I'm going to pause just a minute and introduce my colleagues who will be helping me through these sessions. Tammy Cushing and Brad Withrow Robinson, both my extension colleagues, will be moderating and helping me to facilitate. Thank you so much, Tammy and Brad. Okay, with that, let's get started. This photo, and hopefully Tammy, you can find the photo that Alicia shared. The photo that Tammy is showing right now is the beginning of the Star Mountain Fire, which later merged with and became the Archie Creek Fire. This was taken at 12:30 p.m. on Tuesday, just a couple of hours after it started. This photo was shared by my colleague who debated evacuation, but had not gotten the notification yet. In the end, she followed her gut and left. Hours later, her area was given the Go Now order. I'm guessing many of you share similar stories from your own experience or those of your family and friends. So because we have limited amount of time, do your best to be as concise as possible when called on to speak. Be thoughtful of your airtime and try to limit your story to 3 minutes. And believe me, I know that's not a lot of time. So with that, Tammy, is there somebody up who wants to share their story?
I have not seen anybody say they want to share their story yet.
Great.
Yes, Cheryl Douglas.
Hi, everybody. I am on still evacuation level 2 on Chehalem Mountain, and Chehalem Mountain Fire has been contained 100% thanks to the awesome collaboration of teamwork of our firefighters, loggers, bulldozer operators. We were notified of evacuation at midnight last Tuesday. We had a small fire earlier in the day below us, and I just followed my gut instinct and started preparing. Thankfully, I have a friend that is a certain member in Tualatin, and I had the American Red Cross preparedness list to start, packing stuff up that I could pack. Ironically, it was our second week of having 2 kittens in our house. And tell you what, if you have new animals in your house or even your other animals, you know what really helped us expedite things was having them in a safe room that I can just go grab them and take them with me. We're back in our house this Saturday, and I have to tell you, we have Washington County Sheriff deputies have been awesome from the get-go, letting us know very calmly what was going on to evacuate. And our Tualatin Fire and Rescue had signs welcoming us back home, reassuring us, saying they welcome us back to our homes. With that in mind, my road is right now looking at a plan of action to reduce our fire load. So I'm interested in grants, or also just all the great stuff, Carrie, you put out earlier. I was a part of the webinars. I'm going to be putting a notebook together to present at our next neighborhood meeting. But I tell you what, the collaboration around here has been awesome, and ODF was a part of that too. And it touches my heart to see the good old values of Oregon and people alike coming together. I'm finished.
Thank you so much, Cheryl, for that. I couldn't agree more that so many of us have come together during this really traumatic time. I'm proud of our partners, Oregon Department of Forestry, State Fire Marshal's Office, all those folks for working so hard. You said something that struck me, and I think is a message to all, and kind of what I started off saying with our colleague is, in terms of evacuation, use your gut instincts. If you're feeling like you're not in safe conditions, but you haven't gotten the notification, just leave. So next up we have Joe Buford.
Hi, greetings to everybody. I actually threw my name in there because nobody else had done it, and because I don't really have a big story. I live in Looking Glass. My family has about 870 acres, and we're on the edges of BLM on all sides. So the problem that we have is always watching out for fire. We have a fire truck. We're getting together with neighbors who also have fire equipment, and we're training each other. I have been trying to do any kind of support that I can here in the Douglas County area. There hasn't been a whole lot because we do have the fire going. I have a friend who does fire work every year and hasn't even been called up because it's all happening on federal land at this point. So anyway, I just wanted to throw that out there. I don't want to take much time. Everything for me is fine. We're smoky. I can't see the mountain, which is about a mile as the crow flies away. But other than that, I'm fine here in southwestern Douglas County, almost about 6 miles from Goose County, actually.
Okay.
Thank you.
So, Carrie, there's been a request in the chat that when you share your story, please share your location. And I think because some of these towns are really small, If you will please tell us county as well, that will help a lot of people. So.
Good point.
Thank you.
We do have someone else, Delphine Bush.
Yes. My sister-in-law and I own a little farm on the outskirts of Malala, south of 211. And we were evacuated Tuesday night. We left and took our little dog, but there were 2 horses on the property. We had no trailer. We didn't know anyone outside of Malala to take them to. On Thursday, I reached out and it was contacted by a rescue group in Washington who came and took our horses, and they still have them. We are now back. We're at a level 2, but we're back. But we are deeply, deeply touched by the goodness of people, the first responders, all of them. I get a little tired of the criticism. We have neighbors who did not evacuate at level 3, and I'm sad that they don't have more respect for the firefighters to get out of their way. They insisted that nobody was going to let Malala burn. It was, nobody lets anything burn. So thank you all.
Thank you, Delphine, for sharing that. And I think if one simple thing that we can all do is to send our thoughts to the first responders who are working in difficult conditions, in difficult terrain, fighting these fires. So that's just something simple that I've done. I put my thoughts out towards the firefighters and their families, hoping and praying for their safety. We've got some people in the chat who have mentioned their counties. I'm not sure if that means they want to talk, but John Spies, I see from Talent in Jackson County. Did you want to share anything?
Sure. Yeah, I live in Talent. And the Alameda fire raged through here last week. I live up out of town, thankfully, and about 60 acres, right at the interface of ag and forest land. And we were fortunate, and a lot of friends and co-workers in Talent and Phoenix were not as much, as those towns were both mostly decimated. We watched from our upper field, several of us on our lane here, throughout the day as the town burned, and listened to explosions well into the night. And fortunately, we have some folks here that have big water trucks. So those were staged around the area. I evacuated about 11 o'clock that night and took it up into the mountains and around to come into Ashland, which is only 5 miles away, but it took me about 2.5 hours because there was no other way out. And very scary, very fortunate. And I work in natural resources for the Red River Watershed Council. So we're, as a community, coming together right now and figuring out how best to push forward with some restoration through the Bear Creek corridor to, make sure this, do our best to make sure it doesn't happen again like this. Happened very fast. I had gone to a project that morning and backed out because of the winds were so high that day, and came home and I was watering my garden with my head down, and I looked up and it looked like a bomb had gone off about a half mile away. So we had the tankers flying right over us, right over our heads, and dropping retardant about a quarter mile away throughout that day. And like I said, they did a good job. The first responders from keeping it going up Wagner Creek drainage and Anderson Creek drainage, which would have run right into the National Forest and State Forest. So, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Tammy, do you see anybody else in the chat window that would like to share?
A lot of people put counties in there and locations, and I wasn't sure if that was an indication of wanting to say anything. So if you want to speak and tell your story, if you'll go ahead and put your name in that chat so that it's clear that you're asking for the floor.
I mean, I do see Treetops Ranch from Lane County. I know they put their county in, but perhaps they want to share a story.
That
And I
sounds
see
good.
Jean Bremer as well.
Oh, okay. Thank you. How about Treetops Ranch and then Jean?
We're okay here. No comment.
Thank you,
Although-
Treetops Ranch.
We did get ready, and we live in Cottage Grove. So, but we didn't know what was going to happen. So of course we have horses and we have a horse trailer and everything, and we just packed up and ready to go at any minute, and things turned out very well. And that's all. We're just blessed. We have a lot of friends that may have lost their homes and stuff.
It's really tough. This is such a horrific emotional time. Thank you for coming on and sharing and being vulnerable.
So if you see that Rob Kappa has his hand up, Rob, don't forget to unmute yourself.
Yes, can you hear me, Carrie? I'm sorry, I wasn't able to get the email out to you quick enough.
I can
live
hear
in the
you,
urban
Rob.
area. You can hear me?
Yep.
Okay, I'll make this quick. I live in the urban area in Milwaukee, okay? Just about 1.5 miles from the Selwood area of Portland. And we've, over the last couple of days, experienced even in my area, which is right off of Lake Road and above Rao Junior High, 2 deer coming up on the road, okay? We see them occasionally on the bike trail going through Portland. The other is a coyote, right? So my question is how do we provide for this wildlife and not let people get emotional and scared that something's going to come in and eat them up? Okay, I know it sounds silly, but that's how some people react. So I'll be quiet and listen. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Rob. Let's address that in the questions section. This is time to share stories of our experience, and it sounds like you've experienced some issues with wildlife, and so we'll let the experts address that later on in our conversation. If you happen to have to pop off, I know you said you only had so much time. We'll address that through email or something. It looks like somebody is sharing their screen. Let's let Jean speak because I know she's been waiting, and then if whoever shared their screen wanted to share their screen and show that picture, that would be fine too. But Jean?
Hi, can you hear me?
We sure can.
So we're west of Moala on 211, and Barlow out here is where we're at. And Delphine, I know it sounds like you're close to us. We just had, pretty serious ash and a lot of smoke here the last week. We evacuated out to Hood River for a couple of days and for better air because my husband's got some health issues, and this little boy right here, he was he just turned a year old the day we evacuated, which is a nice birthday, but we came back. It's pretty good. It's still really smoky. We can see about down to the neighbor's house, which is probably, it's not even 1/4 mile. We're finally,
Sorry. Babies.
finally able to see. We had a weird guy out here this morning, not sure what he's about, but this guy's walking on the road, and I think he came up Barlow Road, and he stopped out at the corner here, and he's taking all this brush and putting it in a pile. So I'm going to go out and check the neighborhood later when I get a chance, see if there's other piles just kind of here and there sparsely on the side of the road. It's just kind of weird that he would do that. I thought he was picking up some of the trash and putting it on the corner. So I'm not sure what that's about,
Yeah,
but it was just kind of weird.
It all being private property around and someone not in their car, just kind of wandering around.
Yeah, he was just wandering, walking. So.
Picking weeds. It's just a little weird.
So anyway, we're good. We're just waiting till the air clears better. My daughter and the kids here don't have good air filtration system at the house. So our air in here right now is at 79, which is pretty good. But I think
Thank you, Jean.
finally opened up towards Silverton more down this road.
Thank you so much, Jean. We have Judith Ivy from Lane County. Judith, did you want to share? I think you were trying to set up the before and after photos.
Yeah, I would like to share. I was not actually home at the time. Well, our property is between Leeburg and Vida, and it is my grandfather's homestead. He still homesteaded there in 1905. And I'm trying to see now if I can, I'm not that adept at the sharing thing. This is what it looked like before, and I might be able to show. Can you see that?
We were seeing that, yes.
Okay, this is what it looks like now. We have neighbors who are, you know, loggers, so they were able to go up to check their equipment, and they were able to send us this picture, which is helpful just to know, because we can't get in to see the damage. So it's helpful to have a picture, but it's really heartbreaking.
Sure is.
Yeah.
So sorry.
My son was living up there. It's not, yeah. And so now he's not. He did get out, even though it's a mile off the highway, and he didn't have a car, but we had a caretaker up there living in a motorhome, which is also gone. And he had a pickup, and so they were able to get out.
Thank God.
Wow, Judith.
Yeah, I'm told some of the trees, you can see on that one, some of the trees are still standing back there behind where the house was, and that they might be able to be salvaged by, I don't know how, but not salvaged to live, but salvaged to be lumber. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing.
Jeffrey Simmons, I'm hoping I pronounced his name correctly. Great. Just unmute yourself and the floor is yours.
Unmute, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Good. I'm so sorry to hear the stories. It's unbelievable. I don't have that kind of story to share, but I just have a suggestion. I live just south of Eugene on Spencer Butte. It's a wooded area. And there's a neighborhood association of about 200 people, maybe 100 homes. And what we've started during the night is a neighborhood fire patrol. 1 and 2 of us are going out every hour or 2 hours from midnight to 6. And we have a route that we follow. We go through it roughly twice. It takes a little over an hour. And there's been some pushback on this, interesting enough, because some people think it's political and things of that sort. It isn't anything like that. But people who've been through this probably would agree it isn't political. But I would just like to suggest that be a consideration. I carry in my car a shovel. Now, we're not policemen and we're not firemen, but I carry a shovel, I carry some water, I carry it to pour an extinguisher, a fire blanket, and also one of these funny balls that explode. You can throw them into a fire and they'll take out fire that are about 10 yards by 10 yards. I have 3 of them. And it might be useful. I hope I never find out if I need to use it. But I just wanted to throw that on the table for anybody who's thinking about it. I'm able to get people to do it. That's it.
Thank you, Jeffrey. I think preparedness is key, and the more you're prepared, the better off you'll be. And so kudos to you for organizing that with your neighborhood. Tammy, I have Jen Miller up next, okay?
Hi, folks. I live at the base of the Santiam Canyon. We have 220 acres here. I'm the president of the Watershed Council here. We received the go now at 2:30 in the morning on Tuesday morning. My husband wasn't quite ready to go. Our farm is safe. We actually had 2 of our board members of the council lose their homes. The fire came so fast. We are in action. We have an 8 a.m. Zoom call every morning with the council. We are connected to the Santiam Wildfire Relief Fund and the integration team for the victims. We have volunteers at the Santiam Hospital Center and also at the Salem Evacuation Center. You know, I'm grateful that Rosario Franco Restoration, who is on one of our primary restoration teams for the Watershed Council, arrived at our house with the fire truck and the water immediately, thinking of us, knowing exactly where we were. I think the value of knowing your neighbors, working together all year long is what really saves us. Yeah, and I know quite a few of you, and thank you for your work. That's it.
That is true, Jan. And am I saying your name right, Jan?
Jan Irene.
Jan Irene. That is completely true. You need to work with your neighbors, and thank you for sharing your story. Tammy, I've lost track of the chat. Do you know who is up next?
I don't have anybody in the queue, so if I've missed you, if you'll just pop into that chat box real quick and put your name up so that we see you. With this many people, we cannot see you raise your hand necessarily.
And Dan Stark, he's also with us in Extension. He just put up, which I'm assuming is that fireball thing that Jeffrey just talked about. There's a link in the chat box if you want to see that. Thank you for that, Dan. Great.
What we could do, Carrie, is if we don't have anybody else who wants to share stories, we could move into some questions.
Yeah.
Whenever you're ready. Oh, I've got some, sorry, now somebody's popped in there. And I'm going to say Sammy, and I will let Sammy tell us the last name so that I don't do it a disservice. So make sure you hit unmute.
Thank you. My name is Sami Abdrabba. I'm here in Corvallis. As many of you know, Corvallis has been saved from the fires or any notification except for really heavy smoke. I've been feeling guilty not to do my research, especially when it's about decision making on evacuations. I did not feel it's convenient for me to be in front of my desktop while people are really living this in real time. So what I did is going to the fairground, signed up for volunteering. The list filled up for volunteers opportunities within a few minutes. So it's been very overwhelming to see people coming together. We have the CERT teams across every place in the state. We're activated or volunteering their time, and I've seen some of them there. I want to highlight really some of the evacuees I've seen and met. Some of them felt really devastated, not knowing the conditions of the road back home or the situation of their home. Some of them are CERT volunteers in their own communities, and they did not even feel comfortable being an evacuee and being cared for. They wanted to help. It just gave me the spirits of the Oregonians really stepping up to help each other. I felt humbled. I felt more content. I do sometimes feel that we need to do our work, our research, but the pause that I had this week was very helpful and grounding for me to hear those stories. This is real lives, and we got to really care for each other and know that those situations could be life and death, and they are life and death. So we got to care for each other, be there for each other. And the next time around, because this will happen again and again and again, and maybe on a larger scale, this shouldn't happen the way that it's happened. Fires are always going to be there, but the impacts on us shouldn't be that much. I felt really comforted that our capacity here to receive evacuees was much larger than the need, and that's helpful because we want to be always ready. So I'm just full of gratitude for those who helped our evacuees, and also concerned for those with medical needs, and they are now stranded in an RV and don't know how they can contact their provider. Their hospital has been evacuated, and it's just so hard. So thanks everybody for sharing, and we're all in this together.
We are, and I love that you talk about gratitude. I really appreciate that, and we are all in this together. Some people have been asking privately in chat. Again, I'm Carrie Berger. I'm the fire program manager for the newly funded Oregon State University Extension's fire program. The fire program, we're just getting up and started, and we aim to provide education and outreach to all Oregonians. We've hired a staff of 6 people who will be place-based in your communities to help bring awareness and knowledge about these wildfire issues in the Valley and other places. I'll also be sending out a list of resources. Sammy, you mentioned, where do these people get that information? And so at the end of our session today, I have your emails. I'll send you an email with a list of resources. These are my go-to resources, as well as the recording from today's session. Tammy, do we have somebody else who, I know Pat Allman shared their story in the chat box, and Pat, thank you for that. Folks, go ahead and read that story. Is there anybody else who'd like to share, Tammy?
Yeah, Paul Schroeder had his hand up.
Missed that.
Hi, this is Paul. I just had a question. Andrews Experimental Forest near the town of Blue River, right off of the Blue River Reservoir. I haven't heard or read anything in the news about the fate of the H.J. Andrews. Any news about the status of the forest and how it's fared?
Were you able to hear that, Carrie? It was about the H.J. Andrews forest and what the fate of the forest was.
That's right. I don't have updated information on that. Brad, could you let us know?
I know just a little bit. A day or so ago, it had crept into a section, 1 or 2 of the smaller watersheds within. Last I heard, the infrastructure was not yet affected, the headquarters and stuff, but it has certainly reached into the forest, and we'll just wait and see what the weather does.
And Lisa Ellsworth, also Oregon State University, confirms that H.J. Andrews was not burned.
Has not, did you say?
Has not burned, no.
Great. Thank you all.
And I don't know if we want to give Pat Almond a chance to maybe say some verbal words.
I'm fine with doing that. I just wasn't sure. There are so many stories that we've been lucky. We evacuated and we were gone 4 days and we were able to return. And I want to say that the thing we really appreciated was that map and the evacuation level system. We were able to relate to that. It actually, in our area, Malino, we had Tuesday to figure out to prepare. We had Wednesday to figure out to load up the vehicles. And Thursday we got the level 3. And it was really a helpful system for getting an anchor. And we figured out how to do the map and type in our address. And so those resources are so valuable. And so I want to commend the state for putting that piece together. And I also noticed that our county put out some when you go back recommendations. And so I'm thinking there's a lot, not just neighbors helping one another, but there's a lot with counties and the extension and, putting out information that's real helpful. One of the reminders that our county health person put out is, remember that COVID is still in place, and it was kind of like, while we had to leave, we were sort of, you know, disoriented. I really couldn't quite figure out what's most important because there were all these different crises. So I want to commend you all for the support and the resources that you're providing, because it really gave us a chance. And the one thing that I didn't ever figure out how to do was, you know, the area of Clackamas County was very big and there was a large evacuation area, but it was very difficult to see where the individual fires were. So I did notice that people were driving around, and there's a Deer Alley neighborhood, and people were saying, I'm on Windy City Road and blah, blah, and does anybody know if the fire is near me? And there were people driving around and answering. So there's the neighboring thing is just great. Thanks very much for the opportunity.
Thank you so much for sharing.
Carrie,
I think we just have a couple minutes left. If one other person maybe want to share their story, and then at 12:10 we'll transition to the question portion of this session.
So I don't have anybody teed up, but I do want to call people's attention to information on the H.J. Andrews, which was shared in the chat by a couple of people, places where you can find updates on it, maps and such, from some of our Oregon State folks and cooperators. But right now I do not have anybody teed up and haven't seen any hands raised. So if kind of getting close to that last call on sharing your stories. So if you're interested, please post in the chat with your name.
Just going to post a website. Someone wrote a name to a website, but I'll post the link. This has been a really great resource right there. Has county related resources. That's been super helpful. Anybody else want to share a story before we transition?
I could, but I'm not seeing where to raise my hand. So
go ahead. You can go ahead and just talk.
Well, I'm actually on the other side of the river. I'm over by the fire that was up on the ridge above Newburgh, and I live downtown Newburgh. And I'm a landscape contractor, so I'm out in the field a lot and around in the community. And we had a lot of evacuees from that ridge come down. That was Bald Peak Mountain Ridge. Come down into our churches and school parking lots and set up RV camps and whatnot. And what allowed them to kind of keep a better perspective on what was going on with the fire up on the ridge was that they were all queued up to an app for the Tualatin Valley Fire and Rescue Scanner through, but they had to have iTunes loaded onto their cell phone in order to get that app to load. It's a free app, but it allowed them to actually watch and hear what the teams were doing to fight that fire, where they were fighting that fire, what properties were involved, whether the airplanes could fly or not, when they could, and how much contained the fire was. And it was just, I thought, incredible, because we could actually stand at the bottom of the ridge and watch the fire being fought. And so when we saw flare-ups, we of course wanted to know what was happening and whether or not resources were coming and how much it was going to actually involve the properties below that ridge, of which one I own on our timbers out in Willamina. So, or I mean out in Grand Ronde at Fort Hill. So we're disconnected from our timber property with the fires, but we certainly were trying to keep tabs on our private residents here in Newburgh. And I found that being able to call the scanner up on your cell phone was quite useful, and it might actually help a lot of people to know where the fires are so that they can plot their route out during an evacuation.
Great, thank you so much, Jacqueline. I see Brad Kerr is waving at me. I'm gonna give you a minute, Brad, and then we're gonna transition to the questions. Looks like, okay, go for it.
I wasn't sure what button to push to talk either. So I wanted to explain, I got a little bit emotional when you talked about your new program, but I was aware of. I'm a private biologist, and I work for different different agencies and things in the past. But after a career of frustration where scientifically and ecologically we try to do the best for the land and the electorate doesn't allow us to. So I think that your program, if it could push in the general public, not just landowners, but educating the general public to sway their attitude towards the land managers, so we can allow us to do a better job. I mean, there's millions of acres out there that could use some help, and they've been hampered. And the second point is, I live in golden ponds and lakes and streams, but I'm not pushing that. What I'm pushing for is for people to put in.
Brad, I apologize to interrupt you, but your audio is so bad. I'm having a hard time understanding what you're saying. But, I heard you say something about the fire program, and indeed, you know, we want to disseminate science-based information to all Oregonians to help them prepare in the event that this will occur again. We want to provide them fire prevention and preparedness information, and then also help to facilitate those cross-boundary landscape scale resiliency projects. So we're going to go ahead and transition now to the question portion. It's a 40-minute question period. Please put your questions in the chat box. We will answer questions in the order we receive them. Likely won't get to all of the questions, and we'll do our best to collectively answer any remaining questions via email or our fire program website. And I'll add that fire program website here in a minute. I have my extension and the College of Forestry colleagues on the line with us today, as well as many other partners from the Oregon Department of Forestry, the State Fire Marshal's Office, OHSU, American Forest Foundation, various county agencies, the Nature Conservancies, various federal agencies, private industries, watershed councils, and many more partners. They are on the line to help answer questions you may have. Remember to please remain respectful and ask questions centered around, for example, conditions we saw last week in fire behavior, or smoke questions, evacuation, or questions related to post-fire recovery. This is not a time to get into policy debates or to blame anyone for these fires. With that in mind, please type your questions into the chat. If you have trouble typing your questions and would prefer to speak, simply put your name in the chat window. And now to my partners, please raise your hand or wave at me if you feel you can answer a question. Do your best to wait for me or Tammy to call on you. I have a list of the experts here in front of me. I'll try to match the question with the expert, but I might need your help. So please go ahead and put your questions into the chat box.
Carrie, we have some queued up already, ready to go.
Great.
Yeah, they came quick. And I am going to let you kind of send them to somebody. The first one is, has anyone heard of more recent data than OPB on George, and I'm not going to be able to say the last name, Atia?
I'm not even sure what that is to be able to direct that. So I might pause on that question and go ahead and move on to Annabelle Morgan's question.
The next one asks about the Magnuson tree farm and whether it's okay.
And where is that Magnuson tree farm located? Oh, I'm sorry, okay, yes, Steve.
Did you send that to Steve Fitzgerald?
Is that, are you talking about our College of Forestry?
No,
oh no, the tree farm. Okay, sorry.
That's a different property in.
It's part of the World Forestry Center.
Yeah.
Got it. I have not heard. Has anybody else on the call heard?
That sounds like something we'll have to collect information on.
That's right.
Let's move on.
What funding is available to rehabilitate the forest? So do we have any partners that have knowledge of that? Ariel?
Yes,
Yes.
Yes, we do.
Ariel Cohen, go for it.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Ariel Cowan. I'm with Oregon Department of Forestry. We may have a couple of other folks here from Oregon Department of Forestry. I see Jim Gersbach and Jana Pearson. And so for your local area, I would recommend contacting your local stewardship forester, and they can provide information to you about whether there are grants available. It's possible there are grants in your area where they can sign you up for either grant assistance through a rebate program or a cost share program, if there is funding available to do work, to do fuel reduction work, proactive work. And also there are some resources available if your property has burned. So that differs from area to area around the state. So I would recommend contacting your stewardship forester. And I'll put a link in the chat box of where you can find out that information.
Great, thank you, Ariel. I don't know, Kara had her hand up, but I don't know if that was to help add with that.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that, and again, echoing that this is regionally based, but down here in Jackson, Josephine, in the past, there has been funding through the Emergency Forest Restoration Program, the FRP. I don't know whether or not that's going to be happening again, but for, if you remember the Taylor Klondike fires in the past, there is often funding available for replanting, not usually for homes, but for people who own forest property.
Great, thank you for that. And I will also be sending out a list of resources of groups that you can connect with, FEMA, NRCS, ODF, a variety of those groups, and I will send all that out via document and link in a follow-up email. Brad, you wanted to say something?
Nope, you covered it. I was going to mention NRCS is going to be a good group to contact as well.
That's right. And Ariel, not to put you on the spot again, but you might also help to answer, will there be sufficient seedlings at nurseries to replant? Or Jim, do you want to go ahead?
Well,
Jim?
yeah, this is Jim Gershwick. Should I share screen or just?
And sorry, just to pause, my partners, if you could say your name and the entity you are working with or represent, that would be fantastic. I think you can share your screen. Let me just.
No, I don't want to share the screen. I just want to, if you want to look at me, I guess, in the response.
Yeah. Okay.
So Jim Gershwick, Oregon Department of Forestry. In past fires, large fires that we've had on the landscape, there have been, of course, a lot of landowners at the same time all needing to replant. And some of the things that the Oregon Department of Forestry will do in those situations is work with private and industrial partners sometimes to look at what is the available seedling production. In Eastern Oregon, for example, the Cornet Windy Fire, that we actually extended the period by which people are required to replant if they do salvage logging. So there are provisions we can make that sort of bend those rules that are in effect during normal times when there's a large scale fire that causes lots of landowners to lose trees all at once. So those have been things that we have a lot of experience in. We do work closely with federal partners when they make available the emergency funds, as Kara was talking about. And we just really want to emphasize that it is probably critical for people to be thinking about those issues and getting in touch, as Ariel said, with their local stewardship forester to find out how do I go about doing salvage logging, because not every logger is prepared to do that, especially for small properties. And there is a window, depending on what kind of trees are involved, of how long you can actually economically salvage log. So people need to be thinking about those pretty quickly based on our past experience. But a stewardship forester can help you develop a plan for what to do. It's often bewildering. And sometimes we'll actually bring in a consultant, a forestry consultant, to work with multiple landowners, as we did with the Cornet Windy Fire.
Thank you so much for that, Jim. You know, I'm going to pop back up to an earlier question, I think from Joe Buford, who asked about the George Atia, and I might not have said that person's last name wrong, but there's been some comments in the chat box, and it doesn't look like that person has been found yet, unfortunately.
So Carrie, the next question to tee up, I think I'm going to kick to you, and if you don't want to handle it, it's going forward looking for funding for Firewise neighborhoods, and I know you have Firewise, a little bit of knowledge on that.
Yeah, I do. I'm actually the Firewise chair in my neighborhood here in Corvallis, and I'm actually in the city, and so my funding sources are different, but the National Fire Protection Association and State Farm often have grants that you can apply to. And if you're county-based in a Firewise, you might want to contact, again, your local Oregon Department of Forestry and get with them to ask about funding sources.
Great. The next question was about safely and comfortably staying in our homes with smoke particulates inside our home. I don't know who you have that might be good to talk about indoor air quality.
Yeah, I had someone on the line with me from OHSU, and if they are still on the line, could they speak up towards that? Or anybody from our family and community health in extension? I'm not sure if there's hands raised, but I can take that. I'll do the best I can. I can share my personal experience. A HEPA filter is very helpful to filter out those small particulates. Also, if you don't have a filter, you can create, you can get a filter and put it on a box fan, although being careful, you don't want to start an inside fire doing that. There's instructions on the web. So some filters, I blocked off a room area. I shut the door to our back bedrooms, so I had a designated space for us. I closed, obviously, all the windows. I did run my air conditioning, but I shut off the the lever for the open air so that I wasn't bringing in particulates to the house. You'll want to check your filter regularly so that it's not full of you know, the smoke, the ash debris, and change that. You know, so just trying to create that cleaner air as much as possible by filters if you can. If you can't create such a space in your home, you might seek other locations that have cleaner air, perhaps maybe a local mall, your library, or places like that could help to provide some escape from that smoky air. I don't know if anybody else wants to, on my team, comment on that.
Good points. My husband works in a retail store, and he can tell you that it's just as bad in there, if not worse, than in the house because of the doors opening as often as they do. So try to get to one of those interior stores if you're in somewhere like a mall instead of the big boxes that are at the edges.
Amy, I'm getting a message that your audio is a little bit gargled. I'm not hearing that on my end. You might want to, yeah, you could shut off your video and that might be helpful.
Sure. I'll kill my video. So the next question we have is how can we best encourage neighbors to assist in creating fire-safe distances or zones when they are standoffish and refusing when the extreme fuels are on their property? So that really gets to neighbor relations and how to encourage neighbors to clean up, kind of, if you will, when the fuels are on their side. Anybody have it? Steve, you've probably got some neighbor relations backgrounds.
Yeah, this is Steve Fitzgerald. I'm with Oregon State University. That's a tough one because you can, you know, there's safety in numbers. So you can do kind of clean up on your property and maybe your one neighbor has, and, you know, the more that people do, the better it is. But you always get that reticent homeowner or maybe an absentee homeowner that hasn't done anything on their property. And not only does it put their property at risk, yours as well. You know, this is obviously a teachable moment. I don't, you know, hopefully something like this might spur them and maybe spur you to have a conversation with them when you can. Only you can judge how receptive your neighbor might be to that. I don't know if they're still reticent about doing it, whether they would ever do it, but and maybe you have to move on to the next neighbor. But you know, is it because they don't have the ability? Maybe they don't have the finances. There may be reasons why they're just not willing to do anything. And so I think with a Firewise community, and you get enough, if you're able to do that, to get enough momentum with other people and apply as much peer pressure as you can, that maybe it will spur some additional homeowners in your area to kind of take care of some of the fuels that they may have around their property.
Great, thank you, Steve. The next question.
Tammy, hold up just a minute. Oh, okay. Somebody had already answered that. Somebody was asking for evacuation information.
Yeah,
how do they keep track of that? Somebody else and myself, I added my go-to link in the chat window, so that's where I look.
That was where I was going. Okay, so the
Great.
next one was about ag harvest. Will crops yet to be harvested be recoverable in areas inundated with smoke? How will the smoke residues impact agriculture in the valley? I know we have some people with some information on like my home garden. I think all those kind of questions are related about eating stuff that we grow and the stuff that's being grown in the valley. So if we have somebody in particular who would like to field that one.
Yeah, I know we have Brooke on the line with us, as well as we have the Oregon Department of Agriculture, some folks on the line with us. If any of those folks want to speak up, that'd be great. Thanks, Brooke.
My name is Brooke Edmonds. I'm with OSU. My realm is in the home garden and community gardens, so yards and gardens. So ODA, you can come after and maybe speak to the agriculture crops. So small amounts of ash and smoke that we're experiencing aren't necessarily going to ruin, in the home garden crop there. I know there's some information on grapes. So if we have any folks that are growing grapes, like wine grapes, there's some information, and I can put that in the chat when I'm done here in a moment. But most of the time it's, you're washing it off. So wash off anything outside, get ash off, and then rinse it again. I know for some of our ag crops, that's going to be difficult during the processing, because just adding water into the mix and then shipping will cause some issues. So just making sure to rinse things well. And I don't know if you have anybody, Carrie, that can speak to our ag workers and folks that are out harvesting and their need for N95s and that sort of protection.
Right. I did have some people register from the Oregon Department of Agriculture. Is anybody on the line with us that could help out with that question? And if you're raising your hand and I don't see you, just go ahead and speak up.
This is Cheryl Hummon. I work for Oregon Department of Agriculture. The question isn't my forte, but I have another sort of recent anecdote. For the Oregon Department of Agriculture building, I'm the site coordinator for the local organic farm and their community supported agriculture. So I was talking with them about their approach to harvesting this week. And basically, in order to limit their workers' exposure outside, they're focusing on bulk picking rather than giving us A, B, C, D, E, F in our boxes. We're going to get a lot of A and a lot of B, and it's not going to be washed. And they said they were going to have their workers out in shorter shifts. So they're just trying to adapt and still harvest, but focus on volume rather than diversity of what they're harvesting.
Thank you, Cheryl. Tammy, I see a question from Anna Rankin. how, when, where can watershed councils connect with timber salvage efforts as a source of large wood material for in-stream restoration?
I know we have Kevin Bladen on here. He may have some answers on that. Steve Fitzgerald just raised his
Kevin,
hand.
right.
If Kevin's still on. Steve, do you want to go ahead?
It's probably a little too early to tell, but there may be timber that landowners have that if they're doing a salvage that may be large enough potentially for in-stream use, but may be damaged such that it may not be able to be used for lumber. And you'll only know after they've kind of completed those kinds of salvage harvests to see if there's large pieces that you know, are not going to go to the mill that perhaps then could be used for in-stream log placement and restoration. So I would contact any landowners or private landowners that you know of to see if that potential's down the road.
Great, thank you, Steve. I want to just shout out here and say when I was talking about a clean air and perhaps making your own with a box fan, to most definitely be careful because those box fans can overheat, and of course don't leave that unattended. I know Brooke put that in the chat box. I just wanted to say that out loud. So I'm going to move on to Ed and Jane Wilson, who will be doing watershed damage assessment. Can a chart be created of the burn watersheds and the % of fire damage with ownership, private or public, noted? This could help with formation of friends group to adopt damaged watershed, for example. I know I've been talking to Daniel Lavelle about these post-fire assessments and needs. And I don't know, Daniel, if you want to take this or if there's someone on the call, one of our partners who feel they can answer this question.
Well, I could give it a try. We're proposing to work
Daniel, can you state your name and who you're with?
Daniel Lavelle, OSU Extension. We're proposing working with a group of partners and hopefully ODF and NRCS Forest Service will contribute, but we're proposing to set up a story map platform for post-fire recovery efforts, recovery efforts, where we can have a user-friendly based on tax lots, watersheds, and go up or down in scale and be able to provide information for a basic needs assessment and prioritization process involved, and contacts, who to contact, where to contact, like your stewardship forester, NRCS, and maybe grant funding to have a one-stop shop, if you will, that would be user-friendly enough for landowners to use. And it's in proposal phase, and if it is accepted, we're hoping to have it on board in time to do a really good map and assessment, because we really need to prioritize. There's a lot of activities that, you know, with limited resources, we need to focus. And with fires of this scale, we need to really zero in on what's needed the most and where the impact can be the greatest. So that's what we're working on, that, and hopefully can put that together.
Thank you, Daniel. And Ariel, do you want to follow up on that?
Sure. Once again, Ariel Cowan, Oregon Department of Forestry. And really just in reference to those types of maps, those burn area response maps. Just for a little example, I was able to work with the Forest Service. They often do either a flyover or they take satellite information and create those maps for large wildfires. I believe it'll be likely that they will make maps like that for these fires. And it can be determined, you know, the % acreage of high versus medium and low that's in reference to soil burn severity, I just want to mention. And a lot of that information needs to be ground truth, but a lot of that information would be worked on through the Forest Service, and it's possible you can contact your local stewardship forester, who may already be in touch with the Forest Service if they're on that fire. It depends on who's managing the fire, but often Forest Service will try to create those maps. So it's possible you can find out that information from your local stewardship forester as well.
Great, thank you, Daniel and Ariel.
We have one that I think you might be able to answer, you and Daniel maybe. A local group has been trying to organize fire-wise neighborhoods in our area, WUI, but hasn't gotten, WUI being Wildland Urban Interface, but hasn't gotten much traction. What help can ODF and OSU provide?
Sure, I'll take a first stab at that, and just to step back and say, it really takes a spark in your neighborhood. At least that's what it seemed to be in my neighborhood. It's just somebody highly motivated to make that change. And so on a personal level, I connected a lot with, of course, OSU Extension, my colleagues in the College of Forestry, but also my local county officials, the emergency manager, folks like that. What can OSU provide? Like I said earlier, the fire program is gearing up to provide education and outreach to all Oregonians. We will be placing, we're calling them regional fire specialists all over Oregon. We currently have 4 of those getting ready to be put in place, and they'll help provide information on FireWise and home ignition zone and things like that. And so look forward to more programming coming in the future to your areas. In terms of ODF, Ariel, I don't mean to throw this right back at you again, but do you know, or others from ODF that are on the call, about what the Oregon Department of Forestry can help provide for those FireWise neighborhoods to get them going?
Oh, I don't know if Jim wants to chime in on this one too. So I know here, I'm in Deschutes County, and we work with the county. The county has a county forester and a FireWise or a Project Wildfire employee, and we work with them. Communities can reach out to that person, and then we coordinate to do an assessment and provide them with FireWise information. So it's possible that that's an avenue for folks to contact their county. Otherwise, once again, I keep defaulting to this, but you can contact your local stewardship forester and ask them about it.
It is all really about local, whether you're evacuating or whether you need some help with if you own woodlands, seek out local help. That is your best bet for sure. Jim, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I mean, I think the important thing to note, as Ariel has, is that FireWise is really about what people in a local community identify as what is going to help us in our local situation. And just examples of projects have been some neighbors along a narrow street with a lot of overhanging vegetation got together and said, you know what, we really don't have enough width here in our street to be able to have fire trucks or be able to safely evacuate. So hiring a chipper, they needed some small amounts of funds to have people come in and push that vegetation back, remove it so that the fire trucks could safely get in and that people could safely get out. So FireWise funds a lot of different things. It can be hiring labor, contractors, equipment that they can rent, sometimes a small grant. So it doesn't have to be, a huge project. Jenna Trentadue at our Salem headquarters is our FireWise liaison to that program. So if people do have questions, they can always email her and she can address more specifically. A lot of our stewardship foresters just at the moment are actually assigned to fight fires. So if people can be a little bit patient, Jenna's also doing some firework, but eventually they will be able to get back and see if they can plug people into some of those local resources. But yeah, be thinking about what is the project, what would do the most good for fire risk reduction in your area.
Good point. So Carrie, I'm going to summarize this next one, and I would encourage other people to read what Glenn Meyer put in here about his personal experience with the evacuation. I think some of what he put in here really echoes some experiences that we've heard and seen from other people, that while he felt prepared, he knew to get out when it was time to get out. But where it really gets into it, he was talking about not being really sure where to go, especially considering the center that he was zoned for eventually wound up evacuating anyway. Useful to know what to expect at the evacuation centers. What happens when you get there? What should you take? What do they offer for you? What's essential, absolutely essential to pack, and what to forget about that they're going to hand you. We all know that they've got toothbrushes and toothpaste for you, but what else can they provide? And Carrie, I know you talked about this Go Pack, which was unfamiliar words for me, so maybe you can share some of that and key off some other players.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I can put some links in the chat box for, what is a Go Kit, but, and somebody's going to have to help me out here because I forget all the P's, but they say to remember your 3 or 4 P's, which are your prescriptions, your paperwork, things like that, that would be hard to replace. Yes, of course, you might get a toothbrush at an evacuation center and things like that. But I know I'm in Corvallis and I was not evacuated, but myself and my boys, I've got a 12-year-old and a 10-year-old, we packed our bags. And for me, it was my paperwork, the deeds to the house or your insurance, passports. I also have money in my fire safe and small bills, in case you needed to trade things, you have money for that. That's just general disaster preparedness. Does anybody remember the other P's that I'm missing or can speak to more evacuation? I see Steve's coming online here.
Well, pets.
Oh yeah. I do have 7 chickens and 2 dogs and
yeah, well,
yeah.
And speaking of pets, livestock, or other
yes.
animals, is that if you have to deal with that, you actually have to get organized even well in advance, besides just moving what you have or taking what you have in your house in your go bag. So if you've got a lot of animals to move and you need trailers, that's, lining up other people to help you do that way ahead of time is really important. Because at some point, then if you have to leave, you don't want to have to leave your animals behind. So the more animals you have, or the larger your spread with livestock and horses and other things, it requires quite a bit of pre-planning for sure.
Brad seemed ready to go on that one.
Well, I'm just saying that Stephanie Stafford put in on chat the list that we're all almost remembering. So that was helpful. Also, Carrie and Tammy, there's been a couple questions that we're sort of losing that are sort of watershed related. Mm-hmm. And we have an offer to address them from Courtney. Are we ready to go?
Please do.
I know there's an OWEB question on there. Is that one of the ones you're
Yeah, there were a couple related to water OWEB and some sources, and Courtney from OWEB said that would be willing to take that.
Great. So the OWEB one that I'm finding is asking about, will OWEB respond with a grant program for watershed assessment and restoration planning? So Stephanie.
Courtney.
Stephanie.
Courtney. Sorry.
Hi, Courtney.
Hello, Carrie. Hi, everybody. Courtney Schaff. I'm with the Oregon Watershed Enhancement Board and located here in Corvallis. And thanks for putting this on today. There were 2 questions that I thought I could touch on. One was about the Ashland Forest Resiliency Project, of which OWEB is a funder in that project. And I connected with them earlier, and the fire did, and looking at the maps, the fire did not go through that project. It went north, as we know, through Talent and Phoenix. But there's great information and maps on their website for folks that want more information on that. Related to whether OWEB will respond with grant programs related to assessments and fire restoration, we just had a board meeting last week. I'm always trying to remember the days of the week these days. And we will be having another board meeting in December, and our board will be having conversations about that at this time. Those that might be aware know that OWEB's funding is down this biennium, so we do have to think about what funding we might have available. But we will be having additional conversations at our December 15th board meeting around those topics. So more to come, and thanks for the questions.
Great, thank you.
Hey, Tammy, I have a question here about fire damaged soil from Gail, and she was wondering, she was told that fire damaged soil was very vulnerable to disturbance via compaction. Does anybody else know about that? And I see Steve waving his hand already. So Steve with OSU Extension, go for it.
So for soil, I'm not sure they're necessarily more vulnerable to compaction. A lot of that depends on the soil type. But depending on how severe the soil has been burned, that is the amount of organic matter on top, it can create what we call a hydrophobic layer, which it's basically a layer that doesn't allow water to infiltrate very quickly. And so in the fall rain, sometimes if you get a lot of rain, it goes through the ash, hits that hydrophobic layer and begins to run off. And so you can get debris flows. This is probably most important on really steep slopes and slopes adjacent to homes or to streams. The hydrophobic layer goes away over time, but it's usually the first fall and winter where there's the most concern. It will go away, but you know, there's been a lot of things that can be done, at least over the long run. But in the short run, there's no way to break it up unless you actually go out with some kind of machinery, which it would be very difficult to do on steep slope with down timber and things like that. But this is where we sometimes get you've heard about the flooding after a fire, where on large slopes where it's been really burned and all of a sudden you get this erosion that starts, the water starts, it picks up steam and becomes a debris flow and then flows down canyons and can become quite significant. So, and it clouds our reservoirs and things like that.
Great, thank you, Steve. Tammy, I just want to pause a minute and recognize that there's been a lot happening in the chat, a lot about what you can pack in your go bag, and I want to give a shout out to the Oregon State Fire Marshal's Office, Stephanie. Thank you, Stephanie, and others who posted some really important things to have in those go bags, Sammy as well. And then also Ariel provided information on Firewise USA. Go to that website for more information. There is also information in the chat box about the Ashland Forest Resiliency Project. Go ahead and check out that information and those links. Amanda Rao with the Nature Conservancy confirms that the Forest Resiliency Project was not impacted by the wildfires in Southern Oregon. Someone is asking, Judith, you asked what organization was just represented about forest post-fire evaluation and rehabilitation. I think you might be talking about Courtney Schaff with, Courtney, what group are you with again? Was that with OWEB?
Yes, with the Oregon Watershed Enhancement Board, OWEB.
Great. And Jim is letting us know that the Army Corps of Engineers locally worked with multiple state and federal agencies in Oregon to create a guide for community leaders about post-fire issues of flooding. So that's a really good resource. So you all, we just have a couple minutes left. Let's get any last minute questions in the chat box. I think we've been able to answer almost all of the questions so far. Thank you for those questions that have already come in. Brad, Tammy, are you seeing any hands raised at this time?
No, usually they come up on the bottom and they say hand raised and.
Okay, great. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Courtney, just.
We could be missing something, and our apologies if we have. There's been a terrific flow of questions, but also great participation among other people who have credible, have experience or resources. So we've got all sorts of postings in response to other references and so forth. So really appreciate that. That's been very good.
Yeah, if we've missed a question or want some clarification.
Looks like we have.
Yep. Is anyone studying? Oh, wait, let me back that up then. Okay. Reposting question, given the yep, thank you, Christopher. I did see that and I didn't get back at it. Given the multi-ownership landscape of Oregon's forest lands, private, state, federal, how can a diversity of stakeholders work to develop and implement a cohesive wildfire mitigation strategy? It'd be great if we had EJ on here. But Carrie, who do you think can handle this one?
I would go with Daniel Lavelle.
Yeah.
Perfect.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that, please?
Sure thing, Daniel. Given the multi-ownership landscape of Oregon's forest lands, private, state, and federal, how can a diversity of stakeholders work to develop and implement a cohesive wildfire mitigation strategy?
And Leanne Vradenberg is on the call too, and she may have something to contribute. She's with the Klamath Watershed Partnership. But we, in Klamath and Lake counties, we set up a partnership of private, public, a nonprofit, state, federal partnership together and started assessing, mapping public-private cross-boundary landscape scale projects with the Fremont-Wainema National Forest. We published, there's the link right there. Carrie just put the link in. We published a basic process that it's not a recipe, it's not a mandate of any kind, but it's a process we used to successfully treat. They're on the third landscape now, and within 3 to 5 years are looking at 1 million acres of assessment, prioritizing consistent with the Fremont-Wainema National Forest planning process. And it's about 150,000 acres at a time. That publication includes recommendations on agreements, on assessment protocols, on forming the partnership, on how to implement projects on the ground at that scale. And that is the proof of concept, since it has worked to reduce risk, to manage for forest health, wildlife habitat. It has worked for us down there. And we have used that as a proof of concept to kind of incorporate into the extension fire program, which is what we would like to see extrapolated over the state. And that's, so there's Leanne also answered. So there's a website for that partnership, the Klamath Lake Forest Health Partnership. Leanne put in the chat room. So between the publication that Carrie put in, link, and the link to the Klamath Lake Forest Health Partnership, there it is, a lot of information on that question that it should address prevention, mitigation, everything we're looking at now.
And Daniel, John Souter, also with Extension, reminds us that they're also the community wildfire protection plans, or you hear them called CWPP, that provide these plans on a county-wide basis. So I think we're nearing our end of time. I just want to address, there was one thing here about drinking water and the Oregon DEQ's Drinking Water Protection Program. Could you address the drinking water question above? I think it was.
There was a couple questions about smoke and also drinking and the effect of drinking water. Fairly complicated questions. So if we have anyone from DEQ who could maybe post some resources to chat. I don't think we have to go, but people are certainly concerned about some of the immediate and longer term ecological or air quality and water quality impacts. So
yeah, that one really complicated question really is getting to the science. Is anybody studying what's going on as far as the particulates, the effect they're going to have on soils, the effect they're going to have on water, and then I think the specific on the drinking water, Carrie, was saying that the drinking water protection program from DEQ could assist ODF and OSU with questions about watersheds and drinking water sources. Right. So the question on the science, I don't know specifically on who's studying what. I know Kevin Bladen's on here, he does water quality. John Bailey does some smoke effects. So if they aren't studying it yet, I'm sure it's a new avenue to be looking at. So if any of those scientists want to weigh in on a yes or no, we're already on it.
Yeah. Afternoon, everyone. Kevin Bladen here. I'm a forest hydrologist at Oregon State University. And have spent quite a number of years doing transdisciplinary work, connecting with drinking water utilities. So I have been in contact with both the City of Eugene, City of Salem, and working with both of those cities. And we put together a plan to quantify the source water coming into the intakes of those utilities and have some resources that we're able to provide them to help them to sort of mitigate that risk in terms of providing a safe drinking water to the communities.
Great, thank you, Kevin. And unfortunately, we are out of time. It's just almost 1 o'clock, and I want to be respectful of the time and your day moving forward. So I want to thank you all for attending this session today, and a special thanks to all of our partners for their support during this session, and always. We have a lot of great partners we work with, and I feel very fortunate. I hope in some small way this session has helped you. Please know that Extension, the College of Forestry, and its partners are working together to find solutions forward. Like I said, I'll be sending an email out to the registrant list and provide you my go-to list of resources. I might also pull from the chat window because there was also some really great resources listed there. I'll also provide a recording from today's session, as well as an opportunity to participate in a short Qualtrics survey. I'll do my best. We'll do our best to answer any remaining questions that did not get addressed in this session. We can send those out via email, or perhaps we make a fire fact about them or similar, but just stay tuned, stay connected, and most importantly, stay safe. Thank you, everybody.